Today we're going to talk about the jigsaw and the proper use and setup of the jigsaw. One thing you want to consider whenever you're using a power tool is anytime you're making an adjustment or changing the blade, you want to be sure that the plug is not plugged in, the cord is not plugged in. Jigsaw, to remove the blade, simply open this lock and the blade slides out. This is a fine-tooth blade. It cuts on the upstroke, which means it comes up towards the material, towards the base. It's cutting in an upward stroke. It's a reciprocating saw. It goes down and cuts on the upstroke. Adjustments on the saw. This trigger here adjusts the oscillating portion of the saw, which allows the blade to spin in a round motion as it's stroking up and down. This is going to adjust the airflow that goes into the machine and moves the dust away from the blade. The back here is a dial for changing the speed of the saw from a slow speed to a high speed. Power trigger is here. Squeezing motion to operate the power. Plug the saw in. So a jigsaw is typically used to make circular cuts or curved cuts on a job site. We're going to cut a curved cut. I'm going to mark my cut. Whenever you're making a cut in a piece of material, it's always wise to clamp the material down. When you set the clamps, you want to set them with the bar down below the workpiece. Setting them above the workpiece creates an impalement hazard. Clamp the work to your bench. Keep in mind, you never want to cut material between two sawhorses because you would have a binding action which would cause the saw to kick back or break the blade, or something would go wrong that you wouldn't want to happen. So I have my workpiece extended past the sawhorse on this side. I'm going to make the cut here. It's important to keep the base of the saw flat on the workpiece. Start the saw with the blade away from the material so that it does not bind and can reach full speed. So again, we're going to set the speed. So this is a throttle activated. I can lightly hold the trigger and I'm going to get a slow speed. If I squeeze it full throttle, it's going to be a high speed. So I can adjust that in the back here and set my speed to where I want. So I've set my speed for my cut. One of the things to keep in mind is this saw has a feature where if I squeeze the trigger and press this button here, the saw will continue to run without holding the trigger. So if this should happen to you by accident, you need to remember that to turn the saw off, you simply squeeze the trigger and the saw will shut off. That feature is for cutting long, continuous cuts where you might be a little fatigued holding the trigger. Place the saw on the workpiece, find your line, keep the base as flush as possible to the workpiece. You want to work at a moderate speed, pushing through, letting the saw do the work. Don't force the saw, just allow the saw to make the cut. Typically, when someone's beginning on this saw, at about this point, they're going to get anxious and want to make the cut happen a lot quicker, and this is about where someone might start forcing the saw. But again, you want to just let the saw do the work and take your time. If you go off track and you miss your mark, you don't want to force the saw back towards your line. You can simply back the saw up a little bit within your cut, restart the cut, find your line, and continue on the cut. want to wait till the saw comes to a complete stop before you take the tool away from the workpiece. And there you have it. You want to keep the saw on your bench. You don't want to keep it on the sawhorse because it would fall off and damage the tool. So it's always wise to keep it on the bench or on the workpiece. Unplug the saw when you're done, and then carry on.